Hey guys, welcome back to part number 2 of my Eurofighter build video. So in this episode we're going to look at mostly construction, and we're going to get the main fuselage halves together and the wings put on to make the main bulk of the assembly. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Hey guys, welcome back to part number 2 of my 48th scale Eurofighter build. Part number 1, as you know, we did the cockpit tub, up to number 4 here. In the instructions, we also added the photo etch, which took a little bit of time. Now we're going to work on the main fuselage. So this part we'll be doing from here in the instructions, and through the wheel bays, landing gear bays, and adding the fuselage and wings up to this page here. So this will cover the main kind of bulk of the construction of the fuselage here. So looking for the instructions, it looks like part 5 and 6 are just gluing a few little bits in the inside to add the canards. These are not going to be added right now. I paint and weather those separately, so at the very end, when we're done building this, we'll add these pieces in. We'll obviously glue the pieces in the inside now, before we bud it together. Then we add the cockpit tub goes in, we work on the wheel bays, make sure we drill some holes for the pylons, and the nose, and then attaching the fuselage to the wings, and then the wings, the top section of the wings onto the main assembly. So, okay, so what have I done so far? So, first of all, it is pretty flashy, this kit, so I have to go around and make sure I took a lot of the flash away. So I went ahead and built the main gear bay right here, nothing to really talk about, just a few parts as per instructions, it just slots right in here. One thing, I feel a little stupid for saying this, but I dry fitted this, trying to get the sides on, and I just couldn't get it to fit at all, and I was kind of getting very frustrated with it. I was like, nah, this doesn't fit at all, man. This is crazy. It's bad fit, it's warped, whatever. Long story short, there's a piece of plastic right here, and a piece of plastic right here, which kind of holds it together, and I thought it was part of the kit, but looking through the instructions again, you have to remove it, so that was what's causing it not to fit. So, long story short, I guess read instructions better, so I cut and removed and sanded the piece, make sure it's sanded flat here too, where it joins on both sides, and then you get a nice fit with the main fuselage when I dry fitted it. So, added the wheelbase, like I said, to this part. I cut the wings off, I got rid of all the flash. There's a lot of flash between the two flaps here, which was kind of a nightmare to get into. This side, as you went a little overzealous, took a little bit too much away, so I might have to get some plastic card to fix that, so we'll see how that goes later on. So the wings are cut, and then cut the main fuselage sections out to, again, removing all the sprue attachment points and the flash. Again, flash. Well, Revell and flash kind of go hand in hand, right? So, actually it looks a pretty nice fit putting together, and the nice thing about this kit too is seam lines. The top here, you have like a spine that goes over top, so it covers this seam line. And on the bottom, it's a one piece. So, you don't really have to worry about too much seam. The main seam lines is really going to be at the front here, and right here, to worry about them in the intakes. So, like I said, so I cut them off the sprue, and I did get a Phase Hangar Resin set. So let me kind of show you that real quick. Let's get it right here. So, what you basically get is bottom. You get two inner pylons. Actually, believe it or not, you don't get inner pylons on the kit. So you get the inner pylons. Nice detail. It's still on the resin blocks. So you get two inner pylons. You get the APU exhaust, which we'll talk about in a minute. And two FOD covers, which we'll talk about in a minute too. And then these are just like the dog ears that go onto the pylons. So this wasn't bad. I think it was like maybe $14 or $15 for the whole set. But I think it's definitely a little bit upgrade. So let's talk firstly about the FOD covers. So this kit, this is the intakes. You see there's no detail on the fan blades on the inside. You can see here there's pretty big gaps I've had to fill in. So it's not very good fit at all. So the idea behind this is you paint these nice red, bright, vibrant colour, and these just slot into the intakes at the front, so you don't see any of this junk inside. I forgot I ordered these, so I actually went to the hassle of actually getting rid of the seam lines. So you can kind of see here, this is the method I took from Sean over at Prime Model Works. He does an awesome YouTube channel as well, so check him out. But basically his filler of choice is metallic pigments, gunmetal, MIG pigment, And it has to be metallic. I'm not sure exactly why, the scientific reason behind it, but it only works with this type of metallic pigment. And a thin glue, super glue, like a thin viscosity. This is Zappa Gap. So what I do basically is I just took these little like tattoo cups you get really cheap on eBay or Amazon, get hundreds of thousands of these things, and I just added a little bit of pigment and a few drops of glue, mixed it up to make like kind of like a paste. And then with an old brush, I just basically brushed it onto the seam lines, let it dry, and then I went in and just sanded it down, so it's all smooth. So hopefully when you paint that, you don't see any of the seam lines. Like I said, I forgot I had the fog covers, so, I mean, you're not going to see any of this stuff, so, with the fog covers, but it's somewhat of a waste of time. But anyway, I did that. So I took care of the seam lines and the intake. So the intake just fits nicely, kind of, and it's also the nose gear assembly. So the intake fits nicely, kind of, on there. You can see that. Got a typical Eurofighter kind of look. There it is. So that's the FOD covers. Now, let's talk APU. So I cut this from the block already. It's a tiny little APU exhaust. Can't see, that's kind of hard to see. Focus, there you go. See? So the kit actually has just molded, which is fair enough, but if you want to get this set, make it add a little bit more detail, you need to basically get a hole in here, and then this bit right here glues from the inside, and you can see you get a nice little APU exhaust. So what I did to get the hole, it's always nerve-wracking trying to drilling and making holes into kits, but this was actually pretty easy. It had a, because it's kind of sunk in a little bit, had a kind of bulge on the back here. So I just took a coarse sanding stick and literally just sanded it right here to get rid of that bulge and get rid of the excess plastic until I got it basically wafer thin. You can always see through it. And then I just took my handy master tools or trumpeter seam line scraper, and I literally just prodded it in, and the plastic came away, and I just basically just gently carved it out to the right hole I needed. Just very carefully kept measuring, and once I got it to kind of the size, like I say, then this just fits in like that. And you can see that gives it a little bit more detail than just using the kit, which is just a molded kind of plastic. So that's a nice little upgrade. So that's what I did with that too. So that pretty much catches up where I'm at right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly paint the inside. I forgot to paint the inside of the cockpit right here. So I'm going to paint the top half black, and then the inside the grey, the cockpit tub grey, which is the same colour we used for the tub, the MRP. And once I've done that, we'll come back and then we'll start assembling, adding the APU, adding the intake, and start putting this thing together. Right, so we're back. We painted the black on the top section and the grey cockpit colour on the inside right here. You're not going to see much of it, but done that. Also added the little kind of insert right here for the canards, the forward flaps. I think they're called canards, I might be wrong. So the best way to kind of get this lined up is I basically pushed one of these through the hole and glued this on the back and held it, and then I pulled it out again. So I got alignment. So I got one on that side and then one on this side. As you see, you do have to put it in before you add the cockpit tub. So I added the cockpit tub, just glued that in, and added another little bit of photo etch, which you're not going to see, but right here, this like little thing. Yeah, tiny, you're not going to see it. So that's what I've done with those parts. While I had the paint going, I sprayed the inside, checked the seam lines, and here you see there's still a few little seam lines. I'm not going to bother going over this again, just because I said I'm using the fog coverage, you're not going to see it. So what we can do is, we can get the base here, and we can glue this front wheel well / intake on. So with bigger pieces, I've mentioned in previous videos, I really like the Tamiya white top, just a little thicker, and it can just, I don't know, I just prefer it a little bit more to the extra thin. It's a resin based glue, so I just apply it there, like that, and line up. Okay, while that's drying for a few seconds, I drilled the holes too. So let's look a few pictures and figure out what's going on here. But basically, these two you want to drill, these two you drill, these two you don't. These are already drilled. And then the inner pylons, if you're using the resin kit, which I have from two mics, well actually Phase Hangar it's called now. Phase Hangar, you're going to drill these two for the inner pylon. It took me a while to figure it out, but these are the inner pylon ones. If you just go with the kit, don't drill these out. If you have the inner pylons like I have in the kit, in this resin kit, drill these two on each side. So you're drilling 6 holes on each. Make sure you drill those out too before you put the thing together. I always forget it off the bat. So one of the first things I normally do with the kit is just drill the holes, because I always forget. So we'll put that to the side to let the intake dry a little bit. Also, this little guy which goes behind the cockpit. Just back here. This needs painted too, black, but there's a couple in the photo etch set. There's a couple more little pieces of photo etch. So you've got one on each side here. Again, tiny little pieces. If you can really see that. Just a couple of tiny little pieces of photo etch there. Also, I didn't mention also the photo etch. I added these already for the slime lines on each side. These photo etch, and this part on the back here I glued in already on one side just so I didn't forget it. This is another thing you have to glue before you put the thing together. And that pretty much takes us up to where we are right now. What we can do is we can go ahead and add the seamless intake. Sorry, seamless intake. The APU exhaust. It just, again, just fits in like there. So I'm just going to get a little drop of super glue. Just add a little drop each side. And make sure I've got the right way around. And just hold that till it bites. So when I've got super glue, I'm going to add the nose weight as well. So nose weights, let's talk about nose weights. I like to use the fishing weights, super easy, cheap. So these come about $1 a bag from Walmart, I think like 98 cents or something like that. So different weights, different shapes. So I've got those ones, I've got these big guys, and I have the smaller ones for different. This is more for 70-second scale. Quarter ounce, half ounce, and 1 ounce. So I tried the big ones don't quite fit in the nose, so I'm going to use the middle size, which I have right here. Now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw it in there and touch of super glue and leave it overnight, just let it dry. So I did sand away there's a bunch of like attachment points, and I did sand away and clear all the flash and stuff, so it's all nice and ready to go. Word of warning here, don't use tons of super glue. A lot of people use white glue. I always use super glue. There's been problems in the past. You see people on forums where they've thrown tons of super glue in here and it's reacted with the metal, and then the whole thing's melted and it's turned a whole mess. So just a couple of drops is all you need. And like I say, I've had no issues using super glue, and just hold that weight in. So I'm just going to just smear a little bit of glue on there. Again, not going crazy. And just tilt it back so it rolls down. And that's going to hold it in place. You always want to make sure you fit as well. Obviously the weight fits. See, it's well within the nose. You don't want it so it's not going to fit on the nose, because that'd be a big headache. So let me just check real quick, make sure it does fit. Yep. Yep, no problems. It's worth just double checking. So that's, I'm going to put that to the side, let that dry. And that's pretty much good to go right now. So I'm going to let these things dry for a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is we'll come back and we'll get the two fuselage parts put together, and onto the main kind of the lower fuselage. We'll get the two halves put together and then put onto this. But let me just give this a little bit just to dry, make sure it's good to go. Especially that APU, as make sure that super glue bites, because if that comes loose, it's going to be a real pain to kind of fish that out once it's all glued together. So what I'll do is I'll come back in 2 seconds, and once this is dry, and we'll continue with the rest of the build. Okay, so as you can see, the sides have been glued together. No big problem. And the nice thing about this kit too is, as I mentioned before, this seam line here you're not going to see because there's a spine that goes over it. I think it's right here. So this sits over the top there, so it blocks that seam line. What I've done, as you can see, is using my scraper actually I have in my hand here. I just scrape the front here to get the seam line out, makes it nice and smooth. So just touch up with some paint. And that's pretty much it. You see that the APU is nicely in, dried. So with the power of editing, I actually did this last night before I went to bed. So this has been drying overnight, so it's nice and solid, the whole thing, ready to put onto the lower fuselage. Now, what I'm going to point out is I added this in here. Now this caused me some issues, some confusion. This instructions is very vague. It has this pointing down to here, like, and then a couple of bits go on top. So 1 and 2. So I'm guessing you do this first and then these second. But there's no, doesn't show you where it goes. An arrow pointing to a big gap in the middle of nowhere. I looked for further instructions and you can't see it anywhere else. So I was like, huh. So I just kept fooling around with it and finally I figured it out. So what you need to do is, once the sides are together, this goes flush with the bottom of the fuselage right here. So it goes that way around and it sits flush. Then once that's in, you have the side parts to this. Now, this is what drives me crazy. Like a mini rant here. Revell, why'd you always do this? Same with Tornado. They always screw up the intakes, make it so much more complicated than it needs to be. So I don't know why these bits of plastic could be just molded to this or molded to the side, but there's zero locating tabs, nothing. So basically just putting these on and gluing them basically with a wing and a prayer, hoping it fits, and just kind of using your own kind of touch to make it sure it's smooth. So you never ever can get that perfect. I did the best I could. I glued it in. There's always going to be a seam line somewhere you're going to have to fill. It's just, I don't know why they engineer things like this. If they had, at least had a locating tab or something on the inside, you get it straight, but there's nothing. You're just basically just putting these on and just hoping for the best. But anyway, so that's, so I said these are on. That's how you do it. So this bit goes down first, this way around. If you can see that, this facing upwards. On the bottom there's like a V shape which attaches to the fuselage, and then the side pieces. Okay, so all it's left to do now, which isn't a bad fit, but is just attach this to that and glue it in. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do this off camera because it's a little bit tricky, trying to get it in, to do this, and then, you know, in the camera shot and everything as well, get my fingers out of the way. So I'm going to glue the back parts first, get that in, and then I'm going to tackle these front parts. Again, you don't, this is the problem with this kit, with this bit here, is to get this perfect. It's not going to be, again, not going to be perfect. You can do the best you can, but it probably needs some filler. There's no way I don't think you get this perfect. So what I'm going to do is literally, I'm going to do the back first with just extra thin glue, make sure it's set, and then this front section I'm just going to hold in place and mold it to where I need to be, wait sure it's dry, and do a part at a time. And then once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and do this side, and then do that. And once that's done, we can go ahead and put the wings on. So I'm just going to, off camera, quickly glue that part in, and then we'll come back and we'll attach the wings. Okay, so here you go. We have it. We have the main fuselage attached to the lower, and one wing attached. So I glued the wing on, had it pegged for about 20-30 minutes. That's fully dry now. So not too bad. Kind of turned out pretty good on this side. Sorry, there's a bit of a shadow. You can see that better. A little bit here needs filling, but generally the power line follows straight, not so bad. And this side, glue here, not, again, pretty good. So I started with the back, glued that on, and then I did the front once it's dry a little bit. This side was a little bit trickier for some reason. It didn't quite want to stick, so I used the usual trick of a little bit like spot welding with super glue. So what that means basically is I just added a touch of super glue, just a tiny little drop, and hit it with a kicker. Kicker makes it, chemical reaction, makes it dry instantly. So I apologize if I talked about this already. I kind of lose track of my videos. I think it might be my last build series, but I'll tell you again. So I don't spray this stuff on because it just damages it, you know, goes everywhere. I literally just take the little kind of straw stick out from out the container and just dab it on the item. and tiny little drop. I mean, that's all you need. So what I basically did was, to make it stick, I add, like I said, added a little tiny little bit there, and then once it instantly bonded, once I added the kicker, then I just used extra thin to fill the rest of the hole in, and same on here too. Actually, it looks pretty good now it's dry. Same thing here, wasn't quite sitting nicely, so I had to add just one little touch of super glue just to hold it together, and then add the extra thin. Again, a little bit of a gap here that needs filling, but it seems to be kind of par for the course for Revell kits. So generally looking pretty good. The wing went on fine, that one wing, so I switched and used the white glue, which I'll show you in a minute for the other wing. Make sure I had a good kind of no gaps along here. As you can see, just the way it's molded, there is a gap right here which needs filling. Not, again, just a little bit of putty, you're not going to see any of that, so that's not a big deal at all. So let's finish it off by doing the other wing. So how I do this is, first of all I should mention that I sanded down all these raised ejection pin marks, make sure they're smooth so it's not going to foul anything. And I'm just literally going to take the wing and the white glue and just kind of smear it in. I don't go right to the edge because it kind of, when you sandwich it together, it kind of squeezes it out a little bit, so I kind of leave a little bit of a gap, a couple of millimeters. This stuff I really like, it bonds really good. It doesn't, if I was doing this extra thin, by the time I got around the wing it'll be dry already, so this does stay wet for a little bit longer. And then, not to forget, the actual side of the wing too, attached to the fuselage. And then literally just gonna, it fits pretty good, so just gonna line it up, hit a click, and it looks good. So just gonna take some pegs to hold it in. A little bit of glue. Actually, I'm gonna switch and use extra thin for the front here. Any lines, I think I'm missing a bit of glue. Peg. I'm just going to literally kind of just push it, line it up, push it into the fuselage stick. At this point we need to glue the underneath, so I'm going to go back to the extra thin, just run it down the seam, and just a little bit along the seam here too, along the top. It's just going to, capillary action, it's just going to go in the line and just glue it shut. And again, just kind of hold that close, put some pressure on it to hold it into the wing so it sticks. One thing I just noticed, the sides, the wing looks slightly short on one side the other. I think it's part of the design, so I don't think it's an error of the kit, but you can see kind of the wing. Anyway, so again, just going to make sure it's all nicely closed up. I'm just going to add a little bit extra thin along the back of the flap. Peg it back on. And that is it. So I'm literally going to let that dry for a few minutes, and that completes really a pretty big video, bigger than I expected, but it kind of goes through the main assembly, so a lot of the work's done really. It's just a few little bits and bobs, spine, lumps and bumps to go on, and then we're ready for prime and paint. The nose cone, I'm not going to attach right now. I just looked some pictures online, and the nose is actually slightly different shade to the main body, so it's easy just to paint this a different colour, and at the very end just kind of stick this on. There shouldn't be much of a seam line of any. Actually, it fits really nicely, so I'll just glue that on the very end. Once I painted it, make it a little easier than having to mask around that kind of shape. So there you go. So this is done. So that, again, part number 2's in the books. Come back next week and part number 3 will be up. When part number 3 will take you up to the priming and painting stage. So it should be a lot shorter. So I'll go to adding the spine, as I mentioned, lumps and bumps, and a few other little bits and bobs to get to the paint stage, and the canopy and stuff. And then from there on, there'll be a part about painting. and part about weathering, and that should pretty much take it there. So hopefully you found this video interesting. It's a little bit longer than intended, but there's quite a lot to kind of talk through and go through. Also, this series is a little bit different on last series. Last series I did more of a kind of overview after the fact and kind of talking about it, whereas this I'm kind of talking more as I do it. So please put comments below, let me know what you prefer for next time around when I do another video series. If you guys like how I'm doing it now, it's a little bit longer, but I kind of talk you through and actually do it live on camera, or if you like me just quickly give you a quick kind of summary and overview at the end of each stage. Yep, so again, this is Richard from RW Hobbies. Have a good one, hope you're enjoying this, and see you next time. Goodbye.